the best recycling system in the world. They recycle 80% of their waste. The education system of Finland. Finland has the best education system in the world. Every child is equally educated. And by the way, in 1970, they had a crummy education system. They set out to have the best education system in the world and then created it. And it goes on and on. It says, imagine the arts and culture of New York and the access to parks of the mountains that Seattle has and blah, blah, and the food of Tuscany, and it, you know, it lists 50 cities and something amazing going on in that city, and says, imagine we put those all together. And the reason I did that was because each one of those things is real. You know, Italy really does have amazing food, and San Francisco really does have amazing recycling, and Singapore, by the way, has an astounding housing system where there's no homeless and everybody is housed, because they tie their housing finance and their pension system together so that your pension plan, actually you're investing in your unit. Anyway, bottom line is everybody is housed in really good middle class housing. So the point is, it's not one city, it's taking elements of every city, and if we could put those all together. And the reason for it is, the reason I'm drawing on places where these things really happened is because we could really do all these things in our cities too. Yes?
You mentioned the lack of vision as a primary stumbling block.
Yes.
So we've looked to, cities and states have even looked to the federal government to really have vision around topics like affordable housing. So how do you, if we have plans on the city and state level that are actually good based on best practices, how do you actually get that ramped up? Because I think Singapore's great. We're looking at Massachusetts, looking at their education. We've traveled there. Right. But how do you scale that? I mean, Singapore is great. A lot of these places like Scandinavia, they have great systems, but it's not on a scale for the amount of time we have to address these issues to get, how do you get from there to scaling it up to work in the United States when we have, it's a lot bigger.
So here's the thing, that's why I love cities. Because the question is, how do we scale things up? And it's very hard to solve a 300 million people problem. But it's much easier. So is Boston 750,000? How many people are in Boston?
630.
Pardon me?
630.
630, I gave you credit. So 630. 630 is a whole, it's not easy. I'm saying there's a lot of politics, a lot of complexity here, but it's easier. Cities are the level, and I have seen some really amazing things happen in cities when they lay out a vision and decide to really go for it. They can, it takes decades, but it can really make a difference to the city. So I'll give you an example that's in the book. So in when the civil rights issue happened, in 1950, Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia were exactly the same population within 1,000 people. And their income was exactly the same within $1,000, the average income, the median income of those two cities. Birmingham, when the 60s happened, they were both steel towns, turned inward and racist and confrontational, and Atlanta turned outward, invested in an airport and a whole global, you know, air transportation system, and in racial equality, had one of the first black mayors, etc. The difference today is that Atlanta is literally, the Atlanta metro region is 6 times larger than the Birmingham region. The median income is literally twice as high in Atlanta as it is in Birmingham. So there are core decisions we make about who we think we are as a city or as a people or as a culture that have fantastic positive or negative long-term implications for ourselves. You know, Finland didn't make the world's best education system overnight. It took decades to do that. So imagine if a city said, this is not just talk, we really, really, really want to have the best education system in America, best public education system, and we're going to be relentless about that. And we're going to build consensus with our unions and our parents and our students, and there will be no excuses. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to measure ourselves every month or every quarter or whatever, and really make sure we're getting there. When one of the other stories I tell in the book is about Louisville, Kentucky, when what they did about their education system when integration happened. And they said, we're going to build, so it's not a universally extraordinary education system, but it's a very, very good education system. And when I visited Louisville, they took me to a school that had been called the Manual High School. Most cities had these technical schools where kids who they thought were not on a college track would go, and they'd learn to be a manual laborer, you know. They taught a lot of shop there and some home economics. So they took me to the Manual High School, and they said, we decided to convert this to a magnet school, and it's one of the 10 best schools in America. So I thought, well, that's pretty, you know, like found with hometown boosters, and they're very proud of the school. That's great. Let me Google this, actually. Turns out it's actually number 7, the 7th best high school in America, and has the #1 most merit scholarship of all. This was their Manual High School in the heart of their slough. So if we have a vision and the will, I believe part of our problem is we go, well, we can't really get that much done. The federal government won't let us. We have these problems with that problem. You know, it's hard. Believe me, it is hard. I get all that. Every excuse is true. But if you know, somebody has the best education system in America, let's make it be Boston. Somebody has the most affordable housing in America, let's make it be Boston. It's like we should know what it is we want to achieve, set the vision for it, and then work like the Dickens for decades together. What happens is, as you begin to make progress, it's really, politically, it's so hard. But as you begin to make progress, you begin to shift culture, there's a positive feedback that happens as people begin to see good things happening. And it grows and grows and grows and grows and builds upon itself. So you know what, I'm gonna tell, just one second, I'm gonna tell one more story, and that is of Oklahoma City. So one day, 15 years ago, a guy named Nick, I forgot his last name, becomes head of mayor of Oklahoma City, and the next day he opens somebody hands him Men's Health magazine, which has ranked the fittest and fattest cities in America, and says Oklahoma City is the fattest city in America. And he goes, I don't want to be mayor of the fattest, I don't want to become mayor of the fattest city in America. How do we solve this problem? I have no clue. So he asks his chief of staff runs around, comes back and says, the answer is you need to be a walkable city, you need people to walk. He says, how do you do that? He says, you need sidewalks and street trees and places for people to walk and blah, blah, blah. The mayor sells the vision. We're going to stop being the fattest city in America. And he gets the people of Oklahoma City, he's a Republican mayor, this is a conservative state, to vote for a sales tax increase. And he spends it building wider sidewalks and beautiful street trees and putting a fantastic new library downtown. And everything he does with amazing excellence. He hires a bunch of architects, landscape architects actually from Harvard, but he searches the country for the best he can find. He does it beautifully. People love it. The civic leaders come to him and they say, we have a problem. They are the big corporate leaders. Our children go off to college, they think this is the most boring place in America and they never come back. We want our kids to come back. And so he goes, researches it, and he says, we need to take all our old loft buildings, all warehouse buildings, and convert them into hip new loft districts and you know, have bars and music and all this stuff. So again, he comes up with a vision. He passes another sales tax increase. People fund this. He creates these incredible, thriving, cool places for people to be. This goes on and on. He's done, I think, 5 of these. People said, the traffic here is terrible. What do we do about it? He studies. He says, we need a mass transit system. He gets them to fund light rail. People say, we want to be a globally significant city. He does a study, determines that their river that goes through it, he could put in some rocks and stuff like that, and he's made the #1 place in America to train for Olympic whitewater kayaking. And then, by the way, not only that, he said, you know, like the building, the boathouse that goes with it, he hired like a Pritzker Prize winning architect. It's an incredibly modern, hip, beautiful looking building. What's happened, what he has done over 15 years by delivering with excellence is these people, every time he does a bond issue, they vote to pass. These people are raising their taxes in Oklahoma City to make their city a better place because there's a vision that's being realized and they can feel it happening and they believe in it and they go for it. Yes?
Thank you. You mentioned the need to reimagine the balance between humanity and technology, and that a whole new sense of orchestrating visions
Right.
would help to do that.
Right.
You also mentioned that the symbolic thinking might be a key to that.
Right.
What tools for all the students here should they be using to be able to bring into their own minds the mental skills to do what you're proposing?
Thank you. Great question. So the number one mental skill I recommend for all of you is meditation. Meditation, actually, there's a whole lot of neuroscience, really interesting neuroscience about what meditation does and how it shifts the brain. We are very, very reactive. In a more volatile emotional time, we're even more reactive. That comes from the hippocampus, the emotional centers of our brain. The neo-prefrontal cortex is where we do strategic planning. It's where we do long-range thinking. It's where we imagine. It's where we have the capacity to envision. And we know that actually prayer and meditation shift our brain from one side to the other or help us rebalance these. So it's an ancient, but there are many modern meditation methods too. It's an ancient system that actually turns out to be essential for us to have the mental capacity to be ready for the future. And then anything that involves symbolic thought. So arts and culture, creating, playing music, playing in a band, composing, painting, poetry, all these things, we almost treat them as though they are the flavors of civilization. They're the surpluses, they're the frosting on the cake. They're not. They're actually the cake. And the reason I tell you this is that, humans were a bunch of hunter-gatherers who were in 75,000 years ago, they believe there are only 5,000 of us. We were a pretty irrelevant species. And then we developed this next level of symbolic thought, which allowed us to speak, gave us words. And when we could use words that could represent past and future, represent ideas, this capacity of symbolic thought unleashed us. It's what allowed us to begin to work better as groups and say, hey, you do that, and I'll lift that, and we'll all create something that has never been created before. So the symbolic thought is actually the mental capacity from which civilization arose. So I think anything that develops that capacity today is essential for the next level of civilization.
Just a quick comment, and that is that the symbolic alphanumeric thinking that has come down from 75,000 years to go to today, I think that the symbolic thought has now being understood as pattern recognition. And the power of pattern recognition for music, for pictures, for objects in the real environment, particularly the city, can provide a framework that will help people think better.
So pattern recognition is very important, and there is an article by the author Siddhartha Mukherjee in the April 3rd edition of the New Yorker magazine about pattern recognition in medicine.
I think we take one more question.
Yeah, I have time for one more question, then I gotta go. Yes?
So I have a more mundane big question. So you talked about developing civic responsibility among businesses, but we live in a world of mergers, acquisitions, globalization. There is no Bank of Boston anymore.
Right.
There is no local
No
drugstore.
Right.
So how do you go about developing that sense of responsibility in a particular urban area when the biggest businesses aren't connected to the area?
That's a really important question. So one is we need to grow businesses that are more connected to area. We're seeing a rise of kind of localization and more local businesses. And then there was a time in which even global or national businesses felt that in each place they functioned, they had a local civic responsibility. And I think we need to call upon that again. And I think we need to call upon that again. I think it's essential. I'm going to thank you all. I'm going to move to the back of the room. If anybody wants to buy a book, my publisher will be very happy. I'm happy to sign them for you. And I'm going to have to leave for the airport in about 12 minutes. So I encourage you to buy quickly.
Bravo. Bravo. how can I communicate with you? How can I get in touch with you?
I'll write you. Thank you.